For 10 weeks of chemotherapy, my own mother never once sat beside me. The stranger who did turned out to be the one person alive who could destroy her with a single sentence, and she used it. My mother missed 10 weeks of my chemotherapy sessions for baby showers, photo shoots, and a gender reveal party. She thought no one was keeping count. But one person was sitting right beside me every single time, and she happened to be my mother's best friend of 15 years. What happened when that nurse walked into my sister's baby shower changed everything my family thought they knew. Stay until the end, because the moment she said 4 words out loud, my mother's face never looked the same again. My mother sent me a text 3 hours before my first chemotherapy session. Something came up. Can you get a ride? I stared at that message for a long time. Not because I was angry yet, because I was trying to understand how 6 words could feel heavier than the diagnosis itself. I found out later exactly what something came up meant. It meant balloons. It meant a cake shaped like a pink onesie. It meant my mother standing in my sister's backyard laughing while I sat alone in a vinyl recliner with a needle in my arm, watching poison drip into my veins 1 second at a time. But here's the part she didn't know. The part nobody in my family knew, until the day it all came apart in front of every single one of them. My oncology nurse had known my mother for 11 years, and she remembered everything. My name is Emily, and I was 34 years old, and for as long as I could remember, I had been the daughter who managed things. I was the one who remembered my grandmother's medication schedule. I was the one who drove 2 hours to fix my father's printer because you're just better with computers. I was the one who, at 26, quietly paid off $11,000 of my mother's credit card debt because she cried on the phone and said she didn't know who else to ask. My sister Lauren was 2 years younger than me, and she had never once been asked to manage anything. Lauren was the golden one. Lauren was delicate. Lauren just needed a little more support, my mother always said, as if support were a finite resource she'd already spent all of on me by accident and now had to hoard for the child who actually deserved it. I didn't resent Lauren, not really. I resented the story my mother told about us. In that story, I was the sturdy one, which meant I didn't need anything. And Lauren was the fragile one, which meant she needed everything. So when I found the lump in March, I did what I always did. I managed it quietly. I didn't want to be a burden. I scheduled the mammogram myself. I sat alone in the waiting room. I drove myself home after the biopsy because I told myself I was fine. I was the sturdy one. I didn't need anyone in the passenger seat holding my hand. I only told my mother once I had the full picture. Stage 2. Aggressive, but treatable. Surgery first, then 12 weeks of chemotherapy. My mother cried on the phone. She said all the right words. I'll be there for every appointment. Whatever you need. You're my daughter. I remember exactly where I was standing in my kitchen when she said that. I remember believing her completely. The first chemo session was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in April, 11 days after my double mastectomy. My mother had promised to drive me. She'd even written it in her planner. 3 days before the appointment, Lauren announced she was pregnant. I want to be honest with you. I was happy for her. I cried real, genuine tears of joy when she told me. What I didn't expect was what happened 48 hours later. My mother called me, breathless with excitement, and said Lauren's mother-in-law had offered to throw a baby shower, but only on one specific Tuesday, because that was the only date the venue was free. The Tuesday of my first chemo session. I already told them I'd be there to help set up, my mother said. It's such short notice, but this venue is perfect, and you know how Lauren gets when things aren't perfect. I remember going very quiet on the phone. Mom, I said slowly, that's my first chemo appointment. I know, sweetheart, but you'll have the nurses there. You said yourself the first one is mostly just monitoring, right? I looked it up. It's not even the hard one yet. She had looked it up. She had researched my treatment schedule not to understand what I was walking into, but to build a case for why she could miss it without it counting. I sat with that phone call for 2 full days. I told myself I was overreacting. I told myself the sturdy daughter doesn't make scenes. 3 hours before my appointment, the text came. Something came up. Can you get a ride? I called an Uber. I sat in the back seat with my surgical drains still taped beneath my shirt, and I did not cry. because I had trained myself for 34 years not to cry where anyone could see it. The infusion center smelled like antiseptic and burnt coffee. A nurse named Denise checked me in. She had kind eyes and steady hands, and she introduced herself while she found the vein in my arm on the second try. "First time's always the strangest," Denise said, hanging the IV bag. "You've got someone coming to sit with you?" "No," I said. "Just me today." She paused for half a second, then smiled gently and pulled a chair closer to mine. "Then I'll come check on you extra." Over the next 4 hours, Denise came back again and again. She brought me a warm blanket. She brought me ginger candy for the nausea before I even asked. At one point, when my hands began to tremble, she just sat down next to me and talked about nothing, giving me something to hold on to that wasn't fear. Near the end of the session, she asked my last name to update a chart, and something shifted in her face. "Wait," she said. "Is your mother's name Carol? Carol, who used to teach 3rd grade at Lincoln Elementary?" I nodded, confused. "We were best friends for almost 15 years. Book club, vacations. I was in her wedding to your father. I haven't talked to her in a few years, but Carol, my God." She looked at me, at the IV in my arm, at the blanket around my shoulders, and something behind her eyes went very still. "Does she know you're here right now?" I told her the truth. All of it. The text message, the baby shower, the venue that was only free on one Tuesday. Denise didn't say anything for a moment. She just reached over and squeezed my hand. "I'm going to remember this," she said quietly. "I don't say that to scare you. I say it because some things deserve to be remembered correctly." Over the next 10 weeks, the pattern repeated itself with the quiet consistency of a tide. Session 2, my mother was at a maternity photo shoot, holding light reflectors so Lauren's bump would catch the sun correctly. Session 4, my mother was at a gender reveal party, the one where pink powder exploded from a cannon while I sat under fluorescent lights losing the last of my hair. Session 6, the hardest one, the one where my temperature spiked afterward and I had to be admitted overnight for observation. My mother texted at 11 p.m. She'd seen my missed calls. She was so sorry. She'd been helping Lauren pick out a crib. Denise was there for every single one of those sessions. She never asked me to explain again. She just showed up, quietly, consistently, the way family is supposed to. And every single time, before she started the IV, she would open a small spiral notebook she kept in her scrub pocket and write something down. A date, a time, a few words. I asked her once what it was. "Just keeping my own record," she said. "Nurses document everything, sweetheart. It's habit." I didn't understand yet that she wasn't only documenting my treatment. By session 8, I had lost 40 pounds and every strand of hair on my head. My sister posted a nursery reveal on social media, sage green walls, a white rocking chair, a mobile shaped like clouds, and my mother commented 3 heart emojis and the words, "The most beautiful room I've ever seen." I had not received so much as a phone call that week. My final chemo session fell on the same week as my sister's baby shower, the real one this time. My mother called me 2 days before, her voice bright with excitement, and asked if I could possibly please come to the shower, since your treatments are basically finished anyway. I sat with the phone against my ear for a long moment. "Mom," I said, "my last chemo session is that same morning." "Oh, I completely forgot the date," she said, and I believed she genuinely had. That was almost the worst part. It wasn't malice. It was simply that my treatment had never been important enough to remember in the first place. "I have my last appointment," I said. "I'll come to the shower after, if I have the energy." "Of course," she said. "Whatever you need." That morning, I walked into the infusion center for the final time. Denise was waiting for me with the warm blanket already draped over the back of my usual chair. "Last one," she said, smiling. "Last one," I repeated, and for the first time in 10 weeks, I let myself cry. Not from fear, but from something like relief, and something like grief for all the moments I'd sat here completely alone. Denise held my hand through the final hour. When the IV finished, Denise asked if she could speak to me privately for a moment. She closed the curtain around my chair, I'm going to your sister's baby shower today, she said. I blinked at her. What? Carol invited me. We reconnected a few weeks ago. She reached out of the blue, said she wanted to catch up before the baby came. I said yes before I understood what I was agreeing to sit through. Denise's jaw tightened. I've spent 10 weeks watching what she chose over you. I think it's time she understood that I watched all of it. I didn't ask her to do anything. I never once asked Denise to say a word to my mother. I simply nodded, thanked her for everything, and went home to rest. I decided to go to the shower, not for my mother, for myself, because I wanted to look Lauren in the eye, exhausted and bald and 30 pounds lighter, and prove to myself that I could still show up for the people who never showed up for me. I arrived halfway through the gift opening. My mother spotted me from across the yard, and her face did something complicated, relief and guilt, and something she quickly buried under a bright smile. You made it, she said, hugging me carefully, like I might break. I was 3 minutes into an awkward conversation with an aunt about my hair situation when I saw Denise walk through the gate. My mother's whole face lit up. Denise, you came! She hugged her tightly, spun toward the crowd. Everyone, this is my dear friend from years back. She's a oncology nurse, Denise said, smiling pleasantly. I actually just finished a shift a couple hours ago. Oh, how exciting, my mother said, already reaching for a tray of pastel cupcakes to hand her. It was a meaningful shift, actually, Denise continued, her voice calm, conversational. I finished up with a patient who's been coming to me every single session for the last 10 weeks. Today was her last one. Her name's actually, and she said, Emily. The yard didn't go instantly silent. It went silent the way ice cracks, slow, then all at once. My mother's cupcake stopped halfway to Denise's hand. I recognized the last name the very first week, Denise said, still pleasant, still calm. I didn't say anything because it wasn't my business. But I want you to know, Carol, I've sat with Emily through nausea so bad she couldn't hold water down. I held her hand through a fever spike that put her in the hospital overnight. I watched her go through the hardest 10 weeks of her life completely alone, session after session, while you were at photo shoots and gender reveals. She paused. I kept a record. Force of habit. 10 sessions. 10 dates. You were at 0 of them. My sister had gone white, one hand resting on her stomach, the gift bag she'd been holding forgotten at her feet. I want to be clear, Denise said, turning to the stunned circle of relatives. I'm not here to ruin a celebration. New babies deserve celebrating. But I spent 10 weeks watching a woman fight for her life with nobody in the room, and then I watched her mother stand in a backyard commenting heart emojis on a nursery. I couldn't hold both of those pictures in my head anymore without saying something. My mother's mouth opened and closed. I didn't. The appointments were never the hard ones. She said the first one was just... She had a fever of 103, Denise said quietly. She was admitted overnight. Alone. The silence that followed was the loudest sound I have ever heard. I didn't say a word during any of it. I didn't need to. Denise had simply told the truth, in the calm, factual way nurses tell you your test results, and the truth had done what 10 weeks of my silence never could. My mother found me by the drink table 20 minutes later, her eyes red. Why didn't you tell me how bad it was? I told you every time, I said. I told you the dates. I told you what session it was. You just never asked what any of it meant. She didn't have an answer for that. She has never really had an answer for that. Things didn't fix themselves overnight, and this isn't a story where my mother suddenly became a different person. But something did shift. She came to my 6-month scan. She sat in the waiting room the entire time, and when the doctor said the word clear, she cried harder than I've ever seen her cry, and for the first time in a long time, I let her hold my hand. Lauren's daughter was born 6 weeks after that baby shower. I held her in the hospital, and my mother stood next to me, quiet, watching both of us like she was seeing something for the first time. I still don't know if she fully understands what those 10 weeks cost me. But I know this. I will never again mistake her silence for something I need to manage on my own. And Denise still texts me every year, On the anniversary of my last session, the same 4 words. Proud of you. Every time. If this story taught you anything, let it be this. You are allowed to notice when the people who are supposed to show up for you don't. You are allowed to stop managing everyone else's comfort at the cost of your own survival. And sometimes, the people who see you most clearly aren't the ones who share your blood. They're the ones who simply choose, session after session, to sit down next to you and stay. If this story moved you, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one. Drop a comment below telling me what you would have done in Emily's place, and give this video a like if you believe silence should never be mistaken for peace. See you in the next story.